Welcome back, friends, to the homestead. So I thought we would turn on the camera, see where we go here. But I wanted to talk a little bit about everything that's going on with not only the COVID crisis, but all of the infighting, the rioting, and the protesting. It's, like you guys, I've been following it pretty closely and trying to get information and trying to really find out what's going on and wringing my hands. And the more I watch and the more I see of it, I just find myself just kind of getting in a dark place, almost, I might say, even being depressed, because it's so sad. I get to talk to a lot of folks all over the country, and I hear a lot of things, especially from folks that live in other countries and Europeans, that ask, how could you live there? How could you live in such a place that's so terrible, so violent? There's so much racism and such. And the thing that breaks my heart about that is that that's not the case. That's not what America's about. And I think as a foreigner, if you haven't been to this country, and especially if you haven't been in a car and driven from state to state to state, it's hard to understand the scale, how big America really is, especially for those of you who live in small European countries, and how diverse it is, and what you have seen and the impressions that you have of America and Americans, by and large, most likely, if you haven't been here, made up from what you've seen in Hollywood, sitcoms, and of course what is being put out there by the mainstream media. That's not who we are. That's not what it's about. That's a very tiny minority. And if you were to, I'll tell you what, and I would agree with you. If that's the way it was in every U.S. city, and that's the way that Americans treated one another, I would be renouncing my citizenship and going to some place as well. But that's not the case, and that's not the way it is. And it puts me in a foul mood, in a state of depression, to the way that we're being portrayed, and it's just really isn't the case. The more I watched of this, the more depressed I got, and I was almost getting to the point where I was getting black-pilled. What is black-pilled? That meaning, well, there's just no hope. There's hopeless. It's hopeless. The whole thing is just hopeless, right? You can easily get that impression. Came across something I was reading in the Good Book, and the Lord really spoke to me, and he told me that, he said, you know what, I am a God of peace and of joy and of sound mind. And what he's talking about is that those of us who are people of faith, if you find yourself living in fear or anxiety or anxiousness, that is not the state of mind that a person wants to have, and there's no need for it. That is strictly lies and propaganda from the adversary. And it really caught my attention, because that was not at all what I was experiencing. I was not having any peace in my life, difficulty sleeping, worrying about all these things, worrying about my family, worrying about our future, worrying about our country. There's no peace, there's no joy, just depression and sadness, and sound mind. I can't say that I had a sound mind either. It dawned on me, I realized that this propaganda is not healthy to a person, and there's no point of even watching it or listening to it, because really, you can watch. This weekend, when I heard that there were 18 murders in Chicago and 48 people wounded, that's depressing. That's really sad. I hate to see that. And children being shot. But really, as a man, as a father, husband, what can you actually do about it? Live in Oregon State, Washington State, California, East Coast, whatever. What can you actually do about it? You're going to go there and change anyone's mind? You're going to change policy? Is it any of your business at all whatsoever? So why do we spend time, give that a place in our mind, worrying about that, something that we have no control over whatsoever? What it comes down to is it's a war. It's an information war, and whether that be CNN or MSNBC, what I finally realized, I really thought for years and years that, if we could just get our guy in there, right, in the presidency, if we could just control the House or just control the Senate, as a conservative person, we could really make some changes. I finally realized, if you think, as I used to think, that there is any difference between a Republican and a Democrat, then you are a fool. I'm gonna say it. It's as simple as that. It's two wings of the same bird. It's never going to happen. There's no point of it. There's no point of worrying about it. There's no point of picking sides or going out there and get yourself all worked up or supporting this or supporting that. It's just pointless. We're at the point now politically that everything is so polarized. We'll just use the terms that we all understand, right or left, as meaningless as they are. So polarized that there's no way, apart from one thing, that the two sides can come together and have any sort of an agreement or understanding. So why take time from your precious duties as a husband and a father trying to change something that is gone so far that there's no point to it? Now, there is one thing that can bring Americans, regardless of what side you're on, into alignment, and that is a major catastrophe. And I'm talking life-threatening catastrophe, like where if we don't work together, we're all going to die, or we're all going to die of hunger or thirst. I recently read and reread the book that I recommended to you guys called, I think it was called The Tribe. I don't remember the name of the author. It was so good, it was so interesting and thought-provoking for me that I read it 3 times in a row, or reread it 3 times because there was just so much in it. He made such an interesting point, and one of them was, and I don't remember exactly where this was, but someplace there was a major earthquake, just leveled an entire city. And there was, like most cities, there's definitely a huge separation between the haves and the have-nots, right? We have people that have tremendous wealth that live in nice areas with expensive homes. We have people that are very poor, and that divide is huge. I mean, birds of a feather flock together, right? One doesn't associate with another. Well, it's so interesting that what came out of this massive earthquake is that it was the great equalizer. It didn't matter how big your house was or how much wealth you had. There was no cell phone, no communications. And in just a few minutes, this thriving society was reduced to basically to Stone Age technology. And the only thing that mattered in life was is shelter, water, and food. And the author went to great lengths to talk about, he interviewed some folks that lived through this, and the thing that was really common with them is that there was no animosity between folks. There was no rich, there was no poor, there was no black, there was no white. There was simply those of us together and that were all in the same plight. And if we didn't work together for a common goal, then we were most likely all going to perish. He cites several examples and talked about what that was like and how wonderful that was to have a tribe, to have a common goal, to have something that united everyone in a way that all of this nonsense, racism and history and wealth and poverty, it was simply washed away in this one earthquake. And the folks that lived through this and pulled together to come through the other side said, what was so interesting is when the Red Cross came in and things started to be reinstated and the power and the banks back open again, that tight-knit community that we had, that tribe, for lack of a better word, was we just went back, drifted away back to our former lives, and it was all gone. It was all evaporated. So there is no election, there is no president, there is nothing that is going to bring the right and the left together short of a major calamity. Could be an invasion from China, could be a catastrophic earthquake, could be, who knows, but that's it. So short of that, then there's not really any point of wasting any time or resources, even to the point, I mean, I'm not to blackpill you guys, but does the election, is it really going to make any difference? No, I don't think so. I may have thought so. You might have asked me 6 months ago, I might even have thought so. But now that I've watched the Republicans sit on their hands and have done nothing, these conservatives, and I thought, what have they done? Of course, we can always level accusations at the Democrats, those of us on the right. But let's talk about our own for a while, right? What have they actually done? What have they conserved in the last 30, 40 years? What have they done? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. They haven't done anything. They are so weak that they can't even conserve our bathrooms for our daughters and our sons. I mean, that's how what's the word I'm looking for? It's not neutered. It's like that. That's how weak and ineffective that they are. Do you think going on and continuing to support these people and continue to being involved in U.S. politics, that you think that anything's going to change that hasn't changed in the last 50 years? I'm going to tell you it's not. It's not. So what do we do? What can we do? What do we have control over? Well, I think you need to really consider getting, I know I keep preaching this and beating this drum, you need to get out of the cities. If you live in the cities, especially if you have families, they are going to deteriorate to the point where they are no longer safe. They're not livable. And I've had Christian folks that tell me, well, you know, you're not showing faith. You know, you've moved your family out of the city and into the middle of nowhere. And if you had true faith, you would be able to be a Christian where you were at, right? Well, that's that's a childish perspective. Because we have to look, you know, we have, what was the common thing that you'd see on bumper stickers all the time? What would WWJ, what would Jesus do, right? What's a stupid question? We don't know what Jesus would do. I would say, what would Jesus say? That's what it was. What would Jesus say? That's a stupid bumper sticker. I hated it, always hated it. What we need to do is, what did Jesus do, right? Because that's our example. Was he not put here as an example of us to help us in tough decisions? Remember the story when he was just little and the king at the time was Herod, and Herod found out that a Messiah had been born, someone that was going to challenge his throne, that might actually rise up and dethrone him. Well, to circumvent this, he thought he would be clever, and so he had all of the male children from the age of, just to cover his bases, from 2 and under, destroyed. And we know the story of Christ, that the angel came and warned Joseph and Mary and said, this Herod is going to be looking to kill all the sons. I want you to pack up everything you own, and I want you to leave immediately and go down to Egypt and hide out there for a while. So even Christ's own parents, with Christ himself, was instructed when he was in a dangerous situation that they needed to leave. And they needed to get out of there, that was not safe for them. So you, having a family, and if you're looking outside and you're seeing things deteriorate, and you're seeing the homeless problem come up, and you're seeing that people no longer have respect for law enforcement, or you have a local city government that is sympathetic to people that are rioting and protesting and tearing down Western civilization, you know what, the writing's on the wall, man, and you need to be thinking about getting out of there and moving. There's no point. You're not going to reason with these folks. You're not going to by some clever argument, or you're not going to get the right person in and make any changes. I just think that it's gone too far for that. Sorry, that's really the way that I feel of it. Because most people are not politically active. I mean, if you have that bent and you want to get in there and be a city council member, you know, my hats off to you. Good for you. But most of us don't have time and to do things like that. We're too busy providing for our family. We're too busy mortgages, rents, you know, and taking care of our own, right? So what do you do? I think you need to do is you need to get out into the country, into smaller areas around people that are like-minded politically, because there's no accountability in these big cities, you know, and that's a huge problem, you know. And I hate to keep referencing this book, but it was so profound in so many ways, that this book, The Tribe, talks about how in these early tribes, and especially like with Native American communities, there was no need for law enforcement or for police or even rules or laws or courts or jails, because there was accountability. If you behaved badly and acted up, you know, it was taken care of there. No one was going to tolerate that, and the men of the community would step up and take care of things. Interesting thing, you know, it was common in those days, in a lot of those tribes, and this is not just Native Americans, but all over, that there was no leader per se. You did what you wanted to do. There were rules that you knew the rules. There wasn't anything that was kind of nebulous out there. The tribe had its rules. You followed the rules, and you lived in peace and safety, right? You broke the rules. The consequences were often severe, oftentimes even to the point of death. And if any man rose up and started throwing his weight around, or taking for himself more resources than what was due him, whether that be food or clothing or whatever, it wasn't tolerated. The other men would rise up together and they would deal with it. And everyone knew that if you took resources that were beyond what was allotted to you and you were putting the rest of the folks in your tribe or family at jeopardy, that would be dealt with immediately. And everyone knew that, and everyone kind of towed the line because of it, right? What's so interesting is that in these big cities, you can go through life, you can be a low life, you can steal and rob and deceit and take advantage of folk, and you may never be held accountable for it. You may never see these people that you have wronged ever again. So why not, right? The other thing he points out in the book that's so interesting is that you take CEOs, for example, that are making massive incomes. So I've heard all varying statistics, but sometimes a CEO's income can be 20, 30, 40% higher than your mean worker, the average worker. I mean, no one thinks twice about that. No one thinks, you see a guy that you're working for, we're all working for the same corporation, and he's has a limousine and a private jet. He's taking an unreasonable amount of resources away from the collective, of the group of folks. That would never be tolerated in a small community. If someone was gobbling up so much, taking 40% of the food that the tribe gathered for his own, do you think that would be tolerated by the men in those groups, in those tribes? It would not. It would be unfair to be dealt with. Yet, it's no one's ever punished for it, and even when they're caught, Enron and such, it's rare for any of these guys or women who have stolen or cheated to ever receive any sort of punishment. There's just no accountability. So I think that really the only thing that we can do, what I'm doing, is move to a place that shares the values that you have, that move to a place, a small town, I'm talking really small, where you can know everyone and there's some accountability, and you can be around folks where you can actually make a difference. When you go out and do something, it actually makes a difference. You can volunteer in your community. You can, build relationships. You can know that if your kids are acting up in town, that you're going to hear about it and you can deal with it, before they get into trouble or start running around and doing things that are where you lose control of them, right? Do you know where your kids are at when you live in big cities and when they're here and there? Is there anyone that's out looking out for them? In the large cities, when it's just that's kind of the way it is. Is it going to change? I don't know, but it doesn't really matter, because we can go through. I'll close with this. We can go through the rest of our life just being depressed and angry and trying to get back something that we're never going to have again, or we can start living. We can change our circumstances. Will it turn around? Will the country get back to some form of normal sanity? I don't think so. I think that these young people that are destroying things, and these politicians that are siding with them and against law enforcement, et cetera, are simply a product of 30 years of communism and Marxism being taught in our colleges and universities. I mean, that really is the fruit of their labor, and that's. If you're thinking about sending your kids, if you've raised children in a healthy family with traditional Christian or traditional conservative values, and if you are going to take those children, your sons and daughters, and put them into this environment at these leftist universities, and you're going to pay for it at what, $25,000 annual, or is it semester for this? Then you are insane, and I'll even go so far as to say is irresponsible. You're basically taking your children and throwing them into a wolf's den that will bite you in the butt, that you will regret. Rare and few are the children that can come out of this 4 years, 8-year environment of this indoctrination, of this leftism, of this insanity, that they're going to come out and be normal kids. Even a year ago, I'll tell you, we were talking with Jack and making preparations for college, and he's always wanted to go to law school. We're going to take a hard look at that. And it's going to have to be it's going to have to be the right place before I'll put a dime into sending my children. They're not going to any of these left-wing universities. I'm not going to have them go and try to undo all of the work that I've put into raising these kids. It's not going to happen. I would rather have my children gathered around me working construction or just whatever it took, rather than putting them out there in that environment. But I have resolved to not pay too much attention to this and all of the propaganda being portrayed and all this stuff. Turn off the CNN. Turn off the MSNBC. Fox News is not any different. Fox News is not your friend. Turn it off and start living your life. Make some changes. Get out of the city. Get into a community. Get involved. Start helping raise children in a productive environment. That's all really that we have control of. We have control over ourselves and how we raise our kids and how we treat our own. Right? That's the only thing that we can do. That's something that we can affect. We can affect our local communities, and we can have happy, insulated lives, and until things, if they do, return to normal. But let the cities burn. Let them have their way. You know, if they want to have an area that has no police and no laws and no rule of law and just a free-for-all, let them have it. That's what they wanted. Let's see if it works out for them. I hope it does. But in the meantime, I can't control it. I have no say in it. I can't change anything. And why am I going to turn my attention away from my God-given responsibilities of father and a wife to spend one more minute in worrying about that craziness? Because there's just no point. There's no point. So, yeah, more to come on this. I want to talk a little bit about in an upcoming video on what to look for those of you who are wanting to get out and maybe find a little spot of your own where you can kind of grow your own food and do your own thing and get in a like-minded community. We'll talk a lot about that a lot. A lot of things are changing drastically here on the homestead and on the channel, and that will be coming up. I can't say yet, but that'll be coming up very soon. But we have a lot of big news and major life-changing events, and a lot of that has to do with our changing culture and the way things are. You got to be flexible. Something changes and you don't like it, or it's affecting you negatively. You got to be able to make that change, and that's what we're doing. Thanks for watching. May God bless you and your families. Please keep us in your prayers, and we'll see you guys on the next video.